So now I'd like to get into physically making the flashing. I've made all but one. I'm going to show you how to make one of them, and the rest is the rest of the flashing you could figure out after you see this one piece made. So I'll get these out of the way. And if I go to my drawing, which I already showed you, the piece that I need to make is 29 inches long by 6 with a 1-inch bend. And if I add up my hems and all my flashing legs, I come up with a total of 8 inches. So I know my blank, or my flat piece to start with, is 8 inches by 29 inches. So I'm going to take my flat coil laid out here face up and use a square to mark this out. So I'm going to come up the 8 inches, and I like to mark with a scratch awl for 2 reasons. 1, it's more accurate than a pencil, and 2, this scratch awl, when I apply pressure, makes a mark that goes all the way through the metal. And that's critical when you're using a metal brake, because sometimes when you flip a flash over, you're going to need the mark on both sides to bend it when you flip it over in the brake. So we like just to use a scratch awl so that this comes through on both sides. So here's my 29. And I'll come up the 8 again here. All right. Now that I have that done, I need to make a straight line, and I like to just freehand when I cut this metal. They do make slitters that are commercially available. They make a nice crisp cut, but for chimney flashing, all of my joints are going to be hidden with the exception of my hem joints. So a hand cut is fine. And I've got a nice sharp knife, and putting good pressure downward, I'm just drawing it across my pencil line here and off the edge. And I'll do the same thing with this piece right here. And then to finish this joint, I'm going to need to get a pair of snips, and I'll snip and then fold and break. Okay, I got my snips here. I'm going to snip up our short leg. And then to fold and break, we like to go around opposite of the cut. So I bent that down and back, and we get a nice clean cut. Now that I have my blank here, my 8-inch by 29-inch blank, I can put the physical marks on where my bends are going to occur. So looking at my drawing, I start with a 1/2 inch tight hem. So I'm going to come up a 1/2 inch, and again use a scratch awl so that mark shows through on both sides. Firm pressure. I need 6 inches worth of height, so I know that's going to be a 1/2 inch plus 6, which is 6.5. Then I need a 1-inch bend, which would take me to 7.5. And if I've made my blank right, I have a 1/2 inch left for my open hem, which I do. I'm going to recreate that on the other end. We need marks on both ends to get this squared up in our metal brake. 1/2 inch, 6.5, and 7.5 leaves a 1/2 inch at the very end. And with the scratch awl, like I mentioned, I can see and actually feel my marks coming through the other side. So I can slide this in the brake right side up or down, and I can still find my marks. So now that we've got this done, we're ready to physically move to the metal brake. So I'm going to turn around and do that right here. All right, so I have my blank flashing, which we've cut out. I've got my marks all in place, and I'm ready to make some bends. This here is a 10.5 foot metal brake intended for aluminum flashing only. If you're bending steel flashing, you will need a heavier brake than this. I'm going to open the jaws, and I always start with my tight hem. So I have a tight hem along the bottom, and to finish that tight hem, I want the white always to be faced out, so I know I need to start with the white down. So I'm going to slowly clamp this brake, and then I'm going to find my marks that I made with the scratch awl and get them right on the edge of this brake. So right there is good. I'm right on my mark, and I can go ahead and clamp this brake and give it a bend. Always use 2 hands with the metal brake so it stays true, and then unclamp. So I took that as far as it would go, but that's not yet a tight hem. To get a tight hem, I reclamp, turn my flashing around, and I hold it down here in the throat of this brake, and I hold it down there until I make contact and give it a real sharp pull. And as you can see, that makes a nice, tight, clean hem, which is what we like to see because it stiffens up that flashing. Now that I have my tight hem, I'm ready to continue my bends. To start off, I'm going to make my 90-degree bend right here at the 1-inch mark. Again, that is going to be facing out, so it needs to be down. Open up the jaws and slowly clamp them down. Find my marks. Clamp, and then to make a 90-degree bend, I actually have to go past 90 because that flashing will spring back a little bit. So right there is an eyeballed 90 degrees. Unclamp. And the last thing to make here is my open hem at the top. So I'm going to bend this around so it's not a tight hem but just an open hem. So I'm going to hold this piece in here, loosely clamp, and come out till I see my mark on both sides. So I have my mark, I'm going to clamp it. And to get a loose hem, it's real easy. We take it all the way around until the flashing contacts. So I'm going to take this up slowly until it makes contact and let off. And when I unclamp this piece, I have my completed piece of flashing with a tight hem at the bottom. We got here what was, I believe, our 5-inch leg, a 1-inch leg, and a 1/2-inch open hem, all summed together that made up our 10-inch blank by 29 inches long.